So the scene opens tonight on a foggy, quiet street in London. We zoom down, see our coterie together, walking through the streets, which still remain busy with travelers and a few individuals here and there. The four of you have been making your way up to this part of town, Savile Row, a street quickly becoming famed for its expensive tailors and artisans. But to a few discreet individuals in the know, it has a more colorful infamy attached to its underbelly in the form of a high-class brothel. And fewer still know about the dark underworld of vampiric mingling which exists beneath that. And you have arrived along this stretch of buildings of mostly clothiers and leather workers, seeing the sign hanging from one of these buildings with no symbol of images. Its only bearing is the words Savile Row Tailor. Doesn't seem to stand out very much at all, and actually has a dull off-brown pallor to its exterior with really no decoration to speak of, and a simple wooden door that is closed. You have arrived at this building.
I'm presuming that Amelia is still with us.
Yes, unless you ditched her somewhere. So I guess I should say 5, huh?
There we go. Thomas is going to pull her gently aside and in low tones, while also straightening her gown, fussing over her like a doting father. All right, girl. You've met a handful of our kind. None of them are quite like what you're about to experience. Venture fledglings are twice your age before they've even seen Elysium. And you're about to wade into a very deep pond with some very large fish. Keep your head up, eyes front, not down. Smile. Believe your smile. That's important. If you believe it, they'll believe it. When you smile, it relaxes people and sets them off balance, which is where we want them. The longer you can keep them guessing, the better. Don't fuss with your hair. Don't fuss with your clothes. Say nothing of your status, from whence you came, or your circumstances. Fledglings are expected to be silent anyway, so we'll play along with those expectations. They will flatter you with compliments and demean you with insults in the same breath. Both are bait. Don't rise to it. Blush often, laugh easily, and do your best not to take offense at anything being said, even and especially if it's obviously meant to be offensive.
She looks at you, wide-eyed. Can you start at the beginning?
I'll keep it simple. Speak as little as possible.
Oh, yes.
Present a calm and confident exterior, even if you're terrified inside.
I will try. And she looks around to the rest of you. How are the rest of you looking or reacting to this?
Cormac's wearing the smile, but it's twisted in a way that says he's a little bit irritated by what this poor fledgling's being told.
Robert has just a polite smile.
Elned likewise is wearing her oh so common polite smile. She is very used to the ordeals of, well, hiding any emotions underneath.
You all look so happy. I must practice at this, I suppose.
Never let them know what you're really thinking. That's the key. As for staying silent, he'll give Tom a look, but he'll not tend to continue.
I'd rather they not know that she's a witness to a crime, if it's all the same to you.
Even so, I've never been quiet my entire life. Although, I might not be the best example. I mean, I was exiled. Yes, stay quiet, girl. It's a good idea.
Thomas quirks a little bit of a smirk, but he'll squeeze Amelia's hand for reassurance and make his way in.
All right, here we go into the serpent's mouth.
Don't say things that might terrify her. It will break her, whatever facade she has.
Nothing I can say will terrify her more than the truth. Just wait and see.
All right. The group of you enter, Amelia reluctantly and last to follow. And you enter into this building, and inside is more spacious and accommodating. There's nice plush carpeting, and you see some mannequins here and there holding up suit jackets and robes, other vestments up for display. Some of them are incomplete, clearly still mid-progress. Off to the right, there's a man standing on a slightly elevated floor behind a counter, ready at attention. He has short white hair and a thick, curly white mustache. He himself is dressed finely in a navy blue suit jacket and tunic. Good evening, gentlemen, lady. Ah, Master Chamberlain, a pleasure as always, and Master de Courcy. This should be a lively night indeed.
Thomas dips his head a little bit. Is the proprietress about?
She's examining special inventory. Shall I show you to a fitting room, to a feminine collection, or would you be joining her in the special inventory this evening?
We'll be going into the main hall. Let her know I wish to speak with her.
Very good, sir. And, of course, we have 2 new guests. Are they also participating of the very amenable members of the Patronage Society, as the 2 of you are?
Yes, of course.
And who's this dove at the
Indeed.
end? And he kind of peers behind Robert to Amelia, who's just poking around.
Amelia is my fosterling. She's with the party.
And do you take responsibility for her? He seems to be jotting something down behind the counter.
I do. At least until she is presented formally.
Master Chamberlain, Master de Courcy, and Miss Amelia, and the 2 of you? His eyes kind of go up for a moment.
Thomas gestures first to Elenid. This is Mistress Elenid Versengen and Lord Robert de Vere.
You see some motions with his hand behind this counter as he seems to be writing more down. Very good, sir. Walk this way, please. And he gestures to his side to what looks like a back door for employees.
Cormac falls back in line with Elenid and Robert and gives them a knowing look, making a very obscene gesture in Thomas's way, in direction. And then he winks at them. The obscene gesture, of course, in question would be akin to rubbing a cucumber.
She cracks a small smile and shakes her head before continuing on.
Robert lets loose a smirk, but says nothing.
Amelia follows quietly after the group of you.
It's a little stuffy in here, isn't it? Let's liven the place up.
Give it a moment.
The moment for what?
You're continuing on forward into the back room, I imagine?
Yep.
Okay. So you make your way into the back room and see that there is a descending staircase which you follow down, and beneath this you see that you have entered this what looks like a salon, a kind of lounge with many plush couches. After you descend maybe a couple stories, there are seats and drinks are being served from the central bar area, number of hallways jutting off to private rooms. The salon, you can see, is busy, but not overly so. It's certainly not crowded. You see well-dressed men and women sitting together here and there, speaking quietly and intimately. Candles provide dim lighting. And in the dark corners of the room, you see the more scantily clad women of this brothel, and the heads of both men and some women buried into their necks or their chests. And as Thomas leads the group of you through the brothel, some of these men and women pull up to turn their pale faces around and slowly watch you pass by, licking their lips like sated jackals. Do any of you stop or say anything as you're passing through the brothel on your way to Elysium?
Thomas isn't going to stop, but he is going to take stock of who's here and see if there's anyone he recognizes in spite of the low light.
It's mostly neonates of really no significance or name to them. You've seen some here and there, but many of these neonates simply are existing. And you are aware that Bella Matea has established a kind of deal that any who wish can use her brothel to feed in exchange for a minor boon that grants them access for a year and a day. Amelia, for her part, is looking around in awe and perhaps fear at the faces staring back at her. The group of you have drawn a lot of attention simply just walking through.
Elined, for the most part, tries to keep her head forward and continue on. Her experience with Elysium so far has been to, well, speak only when necessary, as to not give too much away.
Thomas, however, is going to meet any eyes that fall on him very firmly and acknowledge them with a nod.
Of course, no one stops you or gets up or stops from their feeding, and you make your way through a cloth screen at the end of the hall of this salon and descend further, another story or two. Surely it must be quite underground now. We will transition as you make your way into Elysium proper. You descend again and pass through a cloth screen and see the group of you, you see a large ballroom where very little has changed in the last century. There are wide, high ceilings that create much space. The ceilings are vaulted. The floor is fine marble tiles. There are many tables and seats, rounded booths for parties of all sizes to sit together, as well as more private alcoves dug into the sides of this room. Very uniquely, it seems to create very discreet conversation spaces with short walkways. And you can also see that one new addition seems to have been this assortment of small fountains that decorate throughout. Small spouts of water into miniature aqueducts that carry it along the walls, very decoratively and very ornate, but incidentally also creating small pockets of white noise around these booths. You see a dozen or so people in Elysium right now, and Thomas and, let's say, Cormac de Courcy would recognize about half of them. The most obvious is Genevieve Silvers is of course present, a pale woman somewhere in her 30s, dark brunette hair done up intricately and pulled together with braids and small gems that decorates her hair very nicely. Wearing a conservative gray gown, she's speaking with two men who seem to be bickering back and forth about something. One of them, a dashing young man in an understated tunic, a nice jacket, well-trimmed, black facial hair. The other, that seems to be bickering, is apparently of Italian descent somehow. He's a bit larger, and he has this red cap on. Let me put their pictures up. So she's speaking with those two. Meanwhile, elsewhere, there's another small party involving a young woman with milky alabaster skin and fair blonde hair let down around her. She's in a revealing crimson dress and speaking with what appears to be a court jester, as well as a very plain brunette woman in more simpler attire. And again, Thomas and Cormac, you recognize Bella Matea and Helen, the Nosferatu. Neither of you recognize the court jester immediately, although you might have heard of him. And I can take an intelligence in enigmas or intelligence politics if you want to try and see if you might know who this might be. That'll be difficulty 7. And I'll bring their pictures up. Actually, yeah, anybody can roll the intelligence politics or intelligence enigmas. Since you've all been at court, you're all Ancilla. You might, any one of you could know who this is. So Elnett, if you want to roll for that, you can. Oh dear. Okay. Thomas and Cormac, you only by the wild this wild appearance of this man. You've heard by description someone similar of, you think his name is Tom Lafoy, although you really don't know anything else about him except that he's a wild appearing traveler who looks like a jester. Robert, you know quite a bit more about him. Tom Lafoy is a ghoul without a dominator. He is a ghoul without a master. He travels and exchanges services in exchange for vitae. And no one really knows who he was supposed to belong to or what his history is. He seems to change it every time he's asked. And he seems to be visiting London right now. Lastly, in one of the alcoves that's more hidden and discreet, protected by these white noise water fountains, in the distance there is an older gentleman with a great bushy beard and his long black hat. He's speaking with an even older man, a small amount of silver in his hair, although there's not much hair there. And this other man has a very serious expression. And Thomas and Cormac would recognize the man with the beard and the black hat as Mordecai. And he is speaking with a man by the name of Roel Tureau, a ghoul of Caleb's. There are maybe another half dozen or so other individuals lounging around in Elysium, but again, they're mostly either neonates or perhaps ghouls of other attendants here. So those are the main players that you all see, and the scene is yours.
Quite a gathering we have here tonight.
Amelia is sticking close to Thomas, looking out from his side.
Now then, who to speak to with first? Robert scans the potentials.
Scanning with Auspex?
No,
I'm just
out of character. Yeah, out of character. Just how well known is Bella? Like, would Robert even know her?
You spent time in Lincoln and York, but never really London that I can recall. I would say you probably don't know her. Well, yeah, because she doesn't travel very much. She's more of a local legend than a, national one. She's not quite that influential yet. So I'm gonna say no. What you do know is that she's easily the most attractive woman in this room. She seems to be very intent. Well, actually, I'll take a perception, empathy, or maybe etiquette, depending on what you want to know about her. You're a very perceptive man. You can pick up some things about her just by watching her demeanor and behavior.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll take a perception etiquette. I think that's probably the most appropriate standard difficulty. Yeah, You get a good read on her, even just after, a minute or so of watching just from the walls. She seems to be being entertained by this jester, Tom Lafoy, and this other woman beside her, and a handful of perhaps retainers. And from her demeanor, from the way she kind of lounges out, she has this very confident mien about her. She's very sexual in the way that she kind of positions her body, and seems very content, like a lion in its den. She has more confidence than many of the others in this hall with how she comports herself.
Robert will slightly nudge Thomas. That one. Is that perhaps Bella?
Indeed. If we're going to arrange a meeting with Ambrose, she'll be the one. Looks like the sheriff is not currently in attendance, though not terribly odd. He will...
And... apologies.
Go ahead.
And it seems like one of our own may have wandered off.
Yeah, you see that Cormac has kind of slinked off away from you. We'll follow Cormac for a moment. Where do you kind of find a wall to sit down, or stand off at, or do you find a seat by anyone?
He will try to find a seat maybe with somebody he doesn't recognize. He's not above engaging in small talk, but he doesn't want any of the movers and shakers to notice him just yet.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't his show after all, clearly.
Sure. I'm actually, from all of you, just in general, for how you're comporting yourself in Elysium and not to embarrass yourself, I'll take an appearance etiquette standard difficulty. I'm going to roll for Amelia as well. This should go well, since she has no etiquette.
Unfortunately, there's no specialties in there. I wish there was, but there's no specialties at all.
That's about par for the course for Amelia. Once again, the largest appearance etiquette dice pool is the saddest. Alright. No one's doing great, except I guess Thomas is holding pretty well, and Elenid, you're doing very well. So overall, Elenid, you feel very at home here, very confident, and you comport yourself very well in minding your behavior, minding where you're keeping your hands and your eyes, specifically. That's an undervalued trait, but you are practiced from being something of a wallflower in Elysium, and you will be doing fairly well this evening, as you're well practiced at this. And Thomas, you as well are able to get by without any awkward looks or suspicious glances. Cormac and Robert will be drawing a few gazes here and there as you make your entrance. Amelia actually gets a little bit too far away from the group and kind of stumbles into some of these Canaanites who are speaking without really looking. We're kind of walking without paying attention to where she's going, and basically collapses into this table, which draws quite a spectacle. And fortunately for Cormac and Robert, it draws attention away from you and into Amelia, so no one really notices that you're not as cordial or as perhaps You're not blending in quite as well as Thomas or Elenid, but no one really pays attention to that because everyone's paying attention to Amelia making a fool of herself in front of everyone. It draws some jeers and some laughs. Even Bella Matea has gotten up to watch this.
At this, Robert simply frowns and places a fist to his mouth as if to mock a cough.
Thomas is going to collect the girl and, as gently as possible, try to fold her arm around his so he can better direct her away from things like that.
One of these neonates that she kind of collapsed into and turned over a table, actually, you see his a cup that he was drinking kind of spilled over his suit, and he's kind of cleaning up at himself. When he sees you start to pick her up, perhaps you should put her on a leash, since she's not well trained yet.
It seems I have already done so. And he's making a point to lay the ring of the gauntlet over her hand, so it's not easy to miss.
And he kind of looks up at that, and then looks down at his messed up clothes, and looks back at that, and he stops cleaning himself, and his eyes slowly go up to you. My apologies. Please forgive my impudence.
Apologies are not necessary. And he'll reach into a pocket, produce a card. See my men in the clothing district. They'll see that that's replaced.
Yes, thank you, most courteous. Yes. Kind of blinks a few times and looks over to his companion, and he stands up abruptly and removes himself, moving quickly to the screen to leave Elysium.
Conspiratorially, he'll lean towards Amelia. Now would be a good time to laugh.
And she laughs very awkwardly. It draws more attention. Did I do it right? And she looks back to you, very fearful.
Well enough. And he'll lead her towards Bella.
Meanwhile, what's Elena doing?
Well, of course, when the spectacle happened, she was watching. It's hard not to watch a spectacle with that much, distractive effort put into it. Outside of that, she is more taking note of the people that are watching, trying to see which ones are whispering amongst themselves as they are seeing this oh so new bit of gossip.
I'm sorry, who are you inching forward to hear gossip from?
Oh no, she's not inching forward to hear gossip from people. Did my mic cut out at all?
No, I was distracted. That's my fault.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So, summarized, she was initially watching the little dramatic sequence that went on with Amelia, because with a spectacle of that magnitude, of course she was to some extent.
Right.
But once the initial effect of that faded, she began to subtly look about and attempt to see exactly who is, whispering amongst themselves as this is going on. see who is, well, the more gossipy of the group here. Well, the larger group, not particularly ours.
Like specifically gossiping in reflection of that debacle, or just kind of in general gossiping?
More seeing if they're doing it in reflection of that debacle, yes.
Let me look at my characters here. Genevieve Silvers and her two associates, these two others who seem to be speaking, they almost immediately returned back to bickering. They were interrupted briefly. Everyone turned to watch this. But then they seem to be unaffected. They're going back to discussing something with some irritation towards each other, and Genevieve seems to be moderator of some kind. Meanwhile, you do notice this woman in blonde in the thinly veiled crimson gown is kind of shooting glances over towards Thomas and Amelia as she's speaking in hushed tones towards this more plain-looking brunette. And Tom Lafoy, this jester, seems to be smiling ear to ear, watching them as well. And it seems like these two older men off in the alcove never stop talking. And so that's the impression you get of how long. You see a few other smaller groups kind of still looking in that direction, smirking and chuckling, looking over towards Amelia and then to each other to say a few words, but they're a kind of off to the side. This woman in crimson is the only person of real significance you've noticed that seems to still be paying attention. And what is Robert doing?
Robert's taking in all the faces. He's occasionally glancing towards Bella, looking for an opportunity to step in.
Well, you failed your etiquette roll, so you don't really know when a good time to be stepping in would be. You're well trained and well experienced in playing at court. Although you're a little bit off your game tonight, and you're not finding a good moment precisely now. You're not entirely sure. And Cormac, are you still? I mean, you find a table with a few neonates who begin chatting you up, and they provide some casual conversation until you and them are all distracted by this debacle of etiquette that is Amelia. How are you reacting to this, and what do you do?
He's been having a good time chatting up these neonates. They don't need to know who he is necessarily right now. When that happens, however, he turns his head in Amelia's direction and shakes his head lightly, his eyes narrowing a bit. But he can see that she's well tended to. So he just goes back to the conversation like nothing happened. Anyway, as I was saying.
I'll take a charisma empathy from you, standard difficulty, just to kind of carouse some of these neonates as you're making friends without really knowing who you are.
Oh boy.
Wow, you guys and these dice. Okay, well you didn't botch, that's not a botch.
Just a fail, yeah.
It's not terrible. It's not the most lively discussion, and part of that is you can tell these neonates are not, they're not very well read, they're not very well spoken. It's tough to get a conversation going, and so you're not making a whole lot of progress, but you're passing time and not really drawing attention to yourself, so nothing really negative has come of it, at least. We will follow Thomas as he leads Amelia, who now has a splatter of some crimson liquid on her gown, which she's still fussing with, and then she looks to you, and then she seems to remember that she's not supposed to fuss with her dress, so then she stops, and then she fusses with her hair, but then she remembers she's not supposed to do that, and then she stops, and it's very awkward, even just guiding her over. It's tough.
Thomas will do his best to maintain an easy smile throughout.
You do make your way up to Bella as she seems to finish saying something, and then ends her conversation with Helen, I should say, as you draw close enough to speak. And she is still sitting back in this long lounge couch. Helen is off at the end of it, and Tom Lafoy seems to be sitting in a chair adjacent, and there's a table with a few glasses there, and you're approaching as they all kind of watch you approach. And Bella, at the center of this small party, looks up to you, still seated. Well, good evening to me. Dinner and a show. Thank you for providing that entertainment, dear. That was much needed in these sometimes stuffy halls. And she looks to Amelia, smiling. A predator's smile. But Amelia is quiet and seems to just look to you.
My lady, you grow lovelier each time I darken Elysium with my shabby countenance. And he'll bow a little bit.
Take a charisma etiquette from you, difficulty 8. Well, you did pretty well on that initial roll. I will let you add your 2 successes to this as dice. It's still difficulty 8. Ah, Thomas Chamberlain. Formal as ever. And yet, I hear interesting things about you and your inauspicious guests that you've brought in. News arrived just nights ago on the heels of Ambrose's return of the Gauntlet reforged. Is it true?
He fingers the ring that he's on the hand that is clasping Amelia's on his arm. Looking down at it. It is.
Invite them over, would you? I would certainly like to speak with all of them.
Thomas will make eye contact as best he can with his compatriots and give a gesture. It was actually on that point that I wished to engage you in an official capacity. Some of my associates have not been to London previously, and the fledgling here is, well, not familiar with etiquette at court. It seemed appropriate to request an audience with the prince.
And each of you in turn can see that Thomas seems to be making eye contact with you.
Cormac just shakes his head and turns back to his conversation.
Robert catches this, gives a smile, and begins walking towards the group.
Elened, likewise heads on over upon noticing that.
So, Thomas, you are soon joined by Robert and Ellen, at least, but Cormac seems to be engaged.
Thomas frowns a bit. You know our fourth already, and he'll dip his head in Cormac's direction. He's trying to maintain a low profile, apparently. He doesn't believe that his notoriety has quite faded.
Well, I should say it hasn't. But what a shame. I was most looking forward to seeing him back here. But I suppose there will be another night.
As Elenid and Robert form up, he'll turn towards them, gesturing towards Bella. My friends, it is with great pleasure that I present to you the finest of fine English roses, adopted into the bosom of Britannia from Italy herself, chief harpy of London, primogen of Clantoria, and proprietress of this fine establishment, the Lady Bella Matea.
Elened does a very deep curtsy and says, "It is a pleasure to meet you. My name is Elened Vertsingen." After speaking, she finally raises herself back to standing position.
Tom's going to back up a couple of paces so he's not crowding the space.
And Robert returns with a deep bow. Ah, and what a beautiful rose of white you are. My name is Robert Deveux. It is my pleasure.
Bella looks to Thomas and then to each of you in turn as you're presenting yourself before she recrosses a leg. Thomas, I do wish you would stop laying these titles. Every single one you bring up seems to tire me even more, like iron crowns. You, I can tell, are very well practiced at this, my dear. She looks to Elenid. Could tell that the moment you walked in.
Thank you, my lady. It is something I have learned even before my rebirth, as it were.
It shows. Keep it up. And you, and she looks over to you, Robert, are very cute. But you need to improve this. And she kind of gestures broadly to you. You seem to have the training without the execution. Perhaps it's a bad night for you.
Robert's smile quivers at this. For just a moment.
Although it is quite a privilege to be visited by such famous citizens of England and of the Covenant. An eclectic assortment of babes they've chosen, but then again, no one asked my opinion. What brings you all here?
To London or to your doorstep?
To my little corner of the British Isles in particular. And to London.
As I said, a formal presentation of a fledgling, and of course, the matter of the accounting. Be improper for newly arrived Canaanites to fail to present before the prince.
Well, she's not yours, is she?
No. She is a fosterling. Her sire lacks the time to educate her properly, and in repayment of a boon, I have agreed to teach her our ways.
That's very gracious of you, even for a boon. There are many here who could benefit from such generosity. Why her? Why now? Seems to be focusing in on you.
Truth be told, it was quite a sizable boon. I made out like a fox.
She kind of leans in towards you and makes a faux whisper that everyone can hear. I don't believe you.
He leans back in as well, kind of mimics this. I wouldn't respect you half as much if you did.
She smiles faintly at that. And she looks to the two of you, Elenid and Robert, in turn. Are you wallflowers or people?
Tonight, it seems, I have gained the wallflower status.
More often than not, I have tended to avoid the spotlight.
But you're in it now, my dear, as long as you wear those. And she looks down at your ring.
Yes, I am well aware.
This isn't all just for that fledgling. Why else are you in London? And she's looking now between Elenid and Robert instead.
No, it is not just for our fledgling. And of course, we are also here for other business.
She seems to focus in on you as you speak up and then say this. Please be more vague.
Robert simply smiles and, well, if that is what you wish.
Thomas chuckles a bit. official business. We're looking for a particular bruja.
Anyone I might know.
Though he does not reside here, he does have connections here.
Finally, this woman, this more simple-looking woman, the brunette, speaks up. Yes, well, perhaps I know him. Perhaps I could find him for you. I apologize, my name is Helen. I've been here for far too long. I'm among the priors. If perhaps you gave me more information to go on, I might facilitate your official business.
What was the man's name, Ellen? He seems to have forgotten.
His name is Tybalt. Quite easy to get along with. And last I checked, he resides in Bristol, not here. Though he does have his, as previously mentioned, he does have his connections.
Make a roll for her. I'm sorry, my dear, you have to be a bit more specific than that. I don't know this Tybalt individual, but I know many people here.
Oh, it's quite all right. Bristol is the city that I was in for a good chunk of my years, so should we return, it shouldn't be too difficult to talk to him.
Well, if you decide you remember more details about his associates here, perhaps I can get the two of you in touch. Anything, of course, to aid the esteemed Gauntlet.
That is quite kind for you to offer.
This jester off to the side, who's been silently sitting and smiling, he's kind of sitting with his feet on the couch like a child. They play their cards close to the chest. They play their cards close to the vest. Important business, yes? He's looking between each of you in turn.
Why, yes. Tom Lefroy, is it?
And he smiles. His teeth are starting to show, and you see an eerie amount of his gums are showing with his teeth. It's a disconcerting smile. You know of my work. I am quite pleased.
Indeed. Your reputation precedes you.
Oh, a reputation. How delightful. Although I hope it's not one I come in spite of.
Not at all. Perhaps if you are here, maybe you are seeking a patron, unless you've already found one.
A house full of cats can still have a mouse, and a smart mouse knows his house. Patrons are many, but Tom always looks for more.
Is that so? Then, another time, we can speak of your specialties.
Another time? Why not now? Why not now, my friend?
Yes, why not now? Go on then. I do not know the specifics of what you specialize in.
Tom Lefoy knows many things. Tom Lefoy can do many things. Ask an assignment and Tom will succeed.
The jack of all, is it?
And he simply holds up a finger, approvingly.
And you will be frequenting Elysium at this time.
Tom goes many places. Tom knows many faces. I am here and then I am there.
Very well then. And I must think quickly on my offer before you go somewhere else. But not now.
He nods, still smiling. Bella seems to be smirking a bit, looking between the two of you. Yes, well, I shall leave you men to your deals. I do hope you'll come join me on less official business. I'll pass along the message if I see the sheriff, or perhaps if Ambrose deems to grace himself here. Your fledgling will be presented, I'm sure.
Gratitude.
She dips her head lightly. And that's about as much of a dismissal as you'll probably get.
Unless there's any other reason for him to stay, Tom is going to kind of back away a bit and move off.
Amelia is quick to follow you, her eyes darting between each of them. She kind of looks over her shoulder as you lead her away. And Elenid and Robert?
Ned will politely excuse herself.
Robert will give a brief and polite nod as he leaves.
Right, so the group of you depart Bella's company. And Cormac, during this time you see the group of them kind of go up and begin speaking with Bella and Tom Lefoy and Helen in turn. Do you choose to remain here speaking to these neonates, or do you try and engage anyone else here?
He lost interest in them just a little while ago even, and let them go back to their own conversation, not engaging himself in it. He's watching with interest what they're doing with Bella and with this Tom fellow, but he still has no interest in making a show of himself yet. So he'll wait for them to come to him. Unless they choose to leave, and then he'll follow.
After 10 or so minutes of them chatting and speaking, it seems that Tom and the other 3 are joining him and leaving. And looks like all 4 are... Well, where are you going?
I was going to say, Tom would definitely beeline for where Cormac's at.
Okay, there you go. So Elenid, Amelia, Tom, and Robert are heading towards you now.
He will stand when he is approached.
Robert will approach Cormac with a frown.
Had enough sniffing the flowers?
You could say that.
I'm sure you found them quite poisonous.
Well, every rose has its thorn.
Elenid moves in to speak quietly with her. The little group she's with has to attempt not being overheard. And says, yes, and at least 3 of those poisonous flowers have taken notice to the... well, Amelia here.
She did as well as could be expected.
She nods.
Amelia just looks dejected, looking down at the floor.
He'll pat her hand a bit. For a first time, you did fine. Though Bella was a touch... Go ahead.
Yes, it is more of a trained thing to present oneself in courts.
I made a fool of myself.
Better you left an impression than none at all.
I'm not so sure.
You're young enough that the expectations they hold aren't exceedingly high.
She nods, but seems not to change her expression.
Though Bella was a touch disappointed that one of us was absent, cock gaze at Cormac. She seemed intrigued.
She would be. I made quite an impression. That, at least, I'm very good at. And it's the whole reason why I'm staying out of it tonight.
Well, it could just make her interest higher later with you not being there.
It seems to bring to mind an old phrase. I won't bore you with it. Are we to depart now?
I would be satisfied with this. The atmosphere tonight is not pleasing to me at all.
Ever diplomatic, aren't you, Devar? Why don't you just say you're bored? I am. And he'll turn to look at the neonate sitting next to him. Very bored.
They seem to scowl at you and turn away back to their own conversation.
It's why I don't spend much time here. We can go whenever you're ready. I'm happy to as well.
Very well, companions. Let us not delay. And Robert will begin heading towards the exit.
Did you find what she was looking for, at least? Or did we waste our time?
Tom cuts a glance at Elenid. No, until we know more about who it is we're looking for.
Tom, you have...
I provided all the information I have on him.
And Tom, you have intermittently been seeing or catching intentful glances from your sire as she kind of glares at you in between these two bickering individuals.
Well, if that's the case, and he's obviously being beckoned, he'll pass Amelia's hand over to Elenid. Apparently, I'm being called.
She takes her hand and says, "Yes, of course. I'll watch over her while you're gone."
I'll meet you all back at the manor. When I'm through here, of course. Enjoy our fair city, please.
Alright, so you go over to meet with your sire while Elenid, Robert, Cormac, and Amelia remain, or are the four of you departing?
Come, let's go. There's nothing left for us here. And there's still lots of fun we can have tonight.
Yes, it is best we get out of here before anyone decides to make comments.
Robert's already started leaving.
You do realize, of course, the implications of what I've done. I've made myself look quite the naughty boy in Bella's eyes. Probably dropped a point of status. If that's how they measure it these days. Truth of it is, if you must know, I really didn't want to talk with her.
That's fair. I've always found it better to be more of a quiet observer during these things instead of, well, throwing myself to the lions.
She's worse than a lion, my dear. She's the serpent in the Garden of Eden.
Well, you would know better than I would. This city is not one I have been to.
Much more to be seen outside of court than in. Would you like to take a peek at the Tower of London? We won't be able to enter, of course, but it's quite a sight from the outside.
Sure, why not? I mean, we can always take the scenic route back to the manor.
Then follow me and let's see if these feet remember the way.
The group of you start to head away from this table towards the screen entrance as Thomas, you close distance with your sire, and just as you're about to get into speaking range, the man clad in dark, who is younger and has this nice cut facial hair, seems to get exasperated and he kind of throws his hands up. Very well. You will rue this decision. I promise you. And he kind of storms off past you, barely noticing you as he almost kind of pushes past you, but he doesn't. And makes quickly for the screen entrance. Your sire looks mostly impassive, but the hint of fatigue is on her face. And this Italian man has a smug look on him.
My lord, my lady. He'll bow a little bit.
Yes. Good evening, Thomas. This is... I'm sorry, what did you say your name was? And the man in the red cap turns to kind of face both of you at the same time. Ludovico Giovanni. Pleasure to meet you. He bows at the waist, kind of holding at his abdomen and holding at his hat.
No, Venetian, the accent. Beautiful language. Never understood a whit of it.
Thank you. It has been a bit challenging coming here. There are not many people who appreciate the tongue. But I think I have taken up enough time of Lady Silver's. I will retire and perhaps we shall speak again, huh? And he looks between the two of you before he excuses himself. pausing frequently as if sensing some tension and the awkwardness of the man who just stormed off. Genevieve watches him go and then turns to you.
Thomas will offer his arm to her.
She does not take it and instead turns and sits down nearby at one of these lounge couches, then gestures nearby to a seat.
Kind of what he assumed, but he brushes off the snub all the same and goes to join her.
There have been developments.
A great many. Please, what's happened while I was gone?
It seems there are factions forming on the continent, which are starting to spill into our region. That man, Ludovico Giovanni, he seems to be having some kind of feud with the Clan of Death. So far as I can tell, they claim the progenitor lost his mind and created some threat, which they are now trying to remediate. There is also a faction forming now which calls itself the Camarilla. They claim the Giovanni destroyed the progenitor and are hunting the entire clan without any cause. They claim to have some great support and wish to secure England from the predations of the Giovanni and of these rampaging Cainites which are erupting everywhere. I have at the moment spoken with Ambrose, and his position is that we will not intervene on behalf of either side. Currently, the affairs of the continent are just that. The other who stormed off, Cesar de Leon, he was less than accepting of our, allowance of the Giovanni in England. You may or may not hear of them again. I cannot say at this point.
He was clad as a merchant. We will hear of him again.
Likely. What do you have to report of the Gauntlet? I see that the entirety of it, from the rings that I saw, have arrived. They were not here very long.
No. Our business takes us many places, of course. We heard tell that a particular asset would have connections here in London. Perhaps you've heard of a Bruja named Tybalt.
I cannot say that I have. How does this relate to your standing orders? What are your standing orders?
We are investigating the fall of the previous Gauntlet. Beyond that, I cannot comment on an ongoing investigation.
She narrows her eyes at you. Do not forget who put you in such an advantageous place to be part of the Gauntlet.
I am most aware of everything you have done for me.
She kind of taps her finger at the edge of this couch. Of course, your investigation is early. I doubt there is much to be said.
Precious little. But again, ethics prevent me from sharing details outside of the Gauntlet.
She smirks for a moment. That may work with the neonates. Perhaps this fledgling I saw you doting on. But it will not work with me. I will hear of your progress.
Indeed. You will, as soon as there is something to report.
Surely if there were anything of interest at all with anyone you might already have eliminated from your suspects, you would tell me.
Of course I would.
I'll take a manipulation subterfuge from you.
Had a feeling.
You haven't exactly told a lie, but you are being shifty.
Oh yeah.
Good. Well then, what of this fledgling? Why is she here? What is she?
As far as anyone need know, I have adopted her as a fosterling in repayment for a boon. However, you would already know that I owe no such boon to anyone outside of London.
She seems to
She
wait
is-
expectantly.
She is a material witness.
That you must carry around like an animal, a pet.
He'll lower his voice considerably. She was not properly fostered by her sire.
Oh, that is apparent.
If she is to present any evidence in this investigation, she will need to know how to comport herself. I do not trust her to her own devices as yet because, as I said, she was not fostered properly.
And the reason you cannot simply pull the information you need from her and dispose of her.
Who's to say I haven't already pulled that information from her? But a single document can be burned. With no trace left behind.
Yes, well. Do be careful that you don't assume the responsibility of something that you cannot handle.
Prince Ambrose will be informed precisely as to the nature of her importance.
I will see to it that he gets the message.
Do you know when next he'll be holding court? I would like to present her and my associates appropriately while we are going to be in London.
He arrived nights ago, I assume after the meeting with the Covenant, but then promptly left. He said to expect him back within a week. I shall expect at our next meeting a full report of your findings.
As I said, once there are findings to report.
Do not forget that the only ethics you need remind yourself of are the ones that relate to me.
I will bear this in mind.
She nods and dismisses you with the wave of her hand.
As he rises, he'll also mention, if you do hear of a Bruja named Tybalt, or his associates, will you pass on that we are looking for them? Questions only.
She nods.
And he'll bow again and go to depart.
All right. And backing up a bit, following the group led by Robert, including Amelia, Elenid, and Cormac, you are just about to exit through the cloth screen when you hear this outburst from this man. He looks French looking, perhaps. He's fairly roguish, and he kind of turns on his heel after this outburst and moves to leave Elysium, and he passes through the screen just before you were going to, not exactly cutting you off, just in more of a rush, or perhaps more exasperated than you all are.
Robert pays him little mind as he himself is seeking the exit quickly.
Alright. We will transition as the group of you leaves, just on the heels of this man. The four of you rise and make your way back through the brothel and back through the tailor's and finally back out to the streets, and you see this man. Once you get up there, he's almost out of sight. He's walking briskly down the street away. But the four of you have collected yourself in front of the tailors. Seville Row Tailor.
Well then, I suppose we should follow our leads.
What leads we have, at least.
Was there anything identifying, perhaps, the make of the textiles we found?
That would be more of Thomas's expertise, not my own.
I suppose we have little option other than wait for Thomas. Or maybe we could just head to his haven.
Well, Cormac did bring up looking at the Tower of London from a distance. Though if you wish to return to the manor, by all means.
Robert looks in thought for a moment.
As you're standing there, thinking in silence, the door to the tailor opens, and this large Italian man with a hat walks forward, almost bumping into Amelia. He kind of stops and startles himself. Oh, excuse me, did not mean to walk into you. Are you not the group I had heard rumors about? He kind of looks at that group of you.
Depends on the type of rumors you've been hearing.
Robert gives the man a sideways glance, acknowledging his presence.
He lowers his voice. Go ahead.
Elened directs Amelia, so she has to get her out of the way.
Well, the rumor I have heard over the last few days is the group bearing rings by your description have quite a bit of influence in England. Is that true?
These rings do carry prestige with them. Why are you curious?
Forgive my manners. I'm Ludovico Giovanni. I am an envoy from the Giovanni on the continent. Perhaps you can help me in my task. Huh?
Perhaps. I am Robert Devere.
And he looks to the Cormac and Elened in turn.
Erned Vetchsingen.
And I'm Cormac de Courcy. Should your name mean something to us?
Well, in this part of the world, perhaps it does not. But, there is coin to be made. Silver and gold. I am looking for, any information on the Clan of Death. And he lowers his voice again as he looks up and down the street.
I have no interest in getting involved with the politics of others.
My dear Bella, there would be no involvement of your own into this feud we are having. You would make some coin, and I would take care of the rest. You would be, and he kind of brushes his hands together, free of blame.
Not interested.
Oh.
And with that, she goes to leave.
And what about the
That-
three of you?
Let's just say we were interested. What would this little task of yours entail?
Very little on your part. Really, any information you can provide on the whereabouts of the scholars would be most grateful. The more information, of course, the more I could provide in coin.
And how much are we speaking of?
And he puts on a grin on his large, expansive face, and his hands on his hips, as if very triumphant. Well, you may not know the Giovanni in this part of the world, but from where I come from, it is a well-known name. We are something of a growing merchant enterprise. There is coin enough to spread around that even some among you who are already affluent would benefit significantly. The Giovanni does not forget who helped it rise to power. Huh?
That's so, as your family had much success with establishing trade here.
Mostly we have remained in the Mediterranean. We are starting to branch out. We have a few trade routes going all the way up to here. But this business with the Cappadocians has been very distracting for the family. We want this feud to end as quickly as possible, you see. Very dirty business. We wish to be done with it.
No, but of course.
As it stands, the most kind prince here is very amenable to letting me remain in London as a kind of ambassador to the Giovanni family. If you should need of my services or wish to contact me again, you may likely find me here, either in Elysium or perhaps I will take up residence in these fine homes. He kind of looks up and down the streets with a bit of a skeptical glance. You don't have to make any decisions right now. Think about it. He nods, smiling.
And of course, farewell this evening.
And I may also mention, being that we are as a growing power, If silver is perhaps not to your taste, perhaps something else can be arranged, huh? And he smiles again and turns to leave in the opposite direction that Ellen had left.
What a strange fellow. What business could he have with the Cappadocians?
And their whereabouts is a start. No doubt to do some a heinous deed.
No, I don't think it's that. He didn't look like he could harm a fly. Oh well, it doesn't matter. Let's catch up with Ellen, shall we?
Let's.
After all, we don't know anything about the whereabouts of any Cappadocians, including the one we're trying to find.
Alright, and where is Elonid going, or is he just trying to get away?
She was more trying to remove herself from that situation.
Alright, you succeeded. No roll required. And soon enough, you perhaps detect that Cormac, Amelia, and Robert are following after you again. Unless you try to lose them.
No, she did not try to lose them.
Okay, I'm gonna say you catch up then. That man seemed very... I don't know... dishonest.
With people like that, it's best to remove yourself from them before anything happens.
He said they were in a feud of some kind.
And if he is in a feud with them, it could dampen our chances with, well, the person we are trying to get in contact with.
Why are you trying to get in contact with them?
The simple answer is business.
So we're going to see the tower, or are we going to tarry here all night?
Well, I mean, I can't exactly lead myself there, seeing as I don't know the city.
And then if we're done flapping our jaws, let's be on our way.
We have not quite decided where to, have we?
Well, I'm going for one to the Tower of London. You can follow if you wish or not.
I'll find enough place to start. And I will accompany you.
This is not part of our investigation. This is just for fun. Are you going to be okay with that, or with your shirt too stuffed?
I'm sure I'll find something to do while I'm there. So I suppose my shirt will remain stuffed.
Alright, so the group of you head off to the Tower of London?
Indeed.
Okay. So you make your way through the streets. Let's say it's around 1 in the morning at this point, give or take. So, the streets, perhaps you're surprised, perhaps not. There are still people on the streets at this hour. Not as many, of course, but people are still walking here and there. There are countless inns, and so many of these people are drunk and returning home. Some don't seem so drunk, they just seem a little odd. But there's definitely activity on these streets where otherwise you'd find dead quiet and silence and darkness. There is still activity in London even at this hour. And the guards add to that. And as you make your way off, we'll transition back outside the Seville Road Tailors as Thomas Chamberlain, you make your way back up street side and find your companions are long gone. Where do you mean to go now?
Thomas has some very exciting paperwork to deal with. He's going to head back to his manor and handle some business of his own that's not related to the Gauntlet.
Okay. We will follow you for a moment as this scene ends. You make your way off into the streets as well. So I'll say, in not too long of a time with your knowledge of the streets, you make it back to your manor and back into your study, where you have time to work on your documents at your leisure. What are you working on?
He's going to draw up a lack of a better term, bill of sale or bill of transfer of ownership for the bank that he owns. He's also going to start writing up a will as well. He'll call for Kazim. I will need a solicitor, and I will need a priest.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Preferably both of them loose of ethics, but tight of lip.
I will see what I can find.
Gratitude.
And he bows very tightly at the waist. And he departs to find a priest and a solicitor.
Out of curiosity, did my dock foreman ever show up?
I thought you were going down to see him.
Yeah, I mean, we can do that instead, but
I just thought that's what your plan was. I didn't know you summoned him here.
that was the original plan. But either way is fine. I'm not picky.
Okay, yeah, if you had Kazim go and fetch him, that wouldn't be difficult. You'd know that he's probably waiting in the foyer to be summoned up for a meeting.
Yeah, he's not going to do all that. He'll go and meet him.
So you go downstairs into the foyer where you see your foreman, Liam, is there. He's kind of holding his small cap. He's got this short red facial hair. Evening, sir.
He'll offer a hand.
He shakes your hand.
Are you well, Liam?
Well as any night, sir. What can I do for you this evening?
Terribly sorry to have you up so late. I know you have an early shift. I was curious how is recruitment of the veterans from the war.
To be honest, sir, it's not as active as I thought. We got a few recruits, of course, but word's going round that levies are being raised, bolstered, I suppose you might say. So a lot of these veterans are finding positions where they might take up their old roles. Of course, some of the maimed ones can't join up. We've taken on a couple of them, but recruitment's been fairly slow, sir. Sorry to report.
Yeah, if they're looking for a fight, I guess we might need to give them reason to arm themselves on our behalf. I'm sure the pay is bound to be better.
Well, I can't say to have spent much time in the military, sir. I don't really know what the going rates are for the standard man-at-arms, but veteran soldiers of the 100 Years' War fetch a decent price, and it seems a lot of these nobles are pushing a lot of their vassals to increase the levies. It seems there's a lot of water boiling, so to speak, sir.
Sounds like someone's spoiling for a fight.
Indeed.
That's a good job. We'll need to have another of these meetings, see if we can't bring up the quartermaster and our harbor master and chief steward. I'd like to see about bolstering the wages for the men.
I'll let them know, sir. I'm sure they'd be pleased to meet with you and discuss the financials. Frankly, sir, they go over my head. He kind of smiles.
All the same, you work most closely with the men. I'd much rather have your feedback. If it's not too much bother to meet again. Hopefully, not such a late hour.
Do you wish me to meet with these men and find out if we can pay them more?
No. What I want you to find out is what kind of waste we're experiencing in the warehouses and how much is left over between orders, bolts of cloth, even just a few yards, handfuls of spice and the like. See if we have surplus left over. Let them know I'm curious and would like to meet with all three of them, and yourself included, at our earliest mutual convenience.
He nods. I'll let them know the conversation topic of the day and try and let you know as soon as I can about when we can all find time off shift.
You're a good lad, Liam.
Thank you, sir.
Never think I don't appreciate you.
Well, I see what you're trying to do for the veterans. It's mighty kind, sir. I'll let you know when I find out.
You have a good night.
He nods his head, and you can see in the lines beneath his eyes, he's definitely very tired. As respectful as he's being, you know that this is a challenge for him. And so he, after he nods his head and bows a bit, he turns to make his way out, puts his cap back on as he exits. Alright. and otherwise I'll be working on documents to write up a will and transfer ownership of your bank. Or something like that. Yep, I'm not hearing anything.
Something like that.
Okay. Alright, so you'll be busy with that. We'll turn back to outside on the city streets of London. Alright. Following the four of you as you make your way through the streets, led by Cormac, who is most familiar with these streets, you come into view as you kind of exit the denser parts of the town to this bordered off area where no real urbanization exists. It's more of like a moat, and you can see that you're coming across from the western side, and you can see that south of you there is a large gatehouse that leads into the Tower of London and its outer curtain walls, and there are many men on the walls along the checkpoints. It would be quite a feat to break your way into this. So you can see it at a distance. You're not close enough for anybody to be concerned about you right now.
Well, here it is. Impressive, isn't it?
Robert looks up at the tower, nodding his head appreciatively.
Yeah, to give a better description, since I guess Elendid would be less familiar, and just as a refresher, the Tower of London is a complex that has multiple regions to it, and you're at the farthest edge of it. You could probably get into the water, but then you'd reach the edge of a 30-foot tall curtain wall that extends around the exterior. Beyond that, you can see a second curtain wall with multiple towers, about one every 150 feet. And this gatehouse crosses the moat. On the eastern side, there are other larger towers that face a curtain wall and the moat. The southern edge has access to the water, the River Thames, and this one entrance into the tower from the water known as Trader's Gate. And that too has a large gatehouse looming over it. There are no easy ways in, but all of you can see, even beyond the second layer of curtain wall, the white tower at its center, which at this late hour of night you can't quite make out the color difference, although it does seem a bit more pale. The white tower over the years has taken on the grime of weathering, and its once white alabaster stone has turned off-white, but it still stands as a beacon at the center, and its four pillars, the towers at each corner, loom over the entire complex. And every tower you can see across the wall seems to have moving torches. And so you all see this.
Now that we're
Looks up
here,
and nods in appreciation. This tower has been made quite well.
quite well. It's one of the bloodiest, best-made structures in London.
Yes. Yes, it... In my travels, finding a building this defensible is, well, has been few and far between.
And on that note, Elenid, because you have a mind for tactics like no one else in this group does, there's no real required. You have never come across a fortification half as defensive or protected or insulated as the Tower of London. It's easily the greatest castle in England that you're aware of. And even in your travels abroad, very few things even come close to it.
I'm aware. I'm more going for more... Well, she talks in more subtle tones than just outright.
Indeed. You'll have to share some of these places that rival.
A rival is a... Well, they come close to it, some of them. Very few of them. But... Apologies, I seem to have lost my train of thought.
It takes the breath away. Well, at least it does me.
It certainly is impressive. Though I wonder how Edmund Beaufort is faring in this castle.
Who's that?
Why, none other than the Earl of Dorset.
Ah, and what's he doing here?
Why, he's imprisoned.
For what?
Being on the bad side of a more accomplished lord.
Ah,
In short, your standard noble politics.
sounds familiar, doesn't it? His face takes on a very serious cast. I suppose we're done here.
For now, at least.
Unless you want to break in. He smiles hopefully.
She shakes her head, but actually, it's a rather large smile on her face as the gears of her head start turning towards that. That would require much more effort than just the four of us standing here.
I would not mind an invitation inside.
That we might never receive.
Who knows? If the Elysium was anything to go off of, the important people at the very least were interested in seeing the new Gauntlet.
Quite a few of them didn't look very impressed from where I sat.
Quite a few of them probably didn't notice the rings. They're probably too wrapped up in their own things.
There are many more neonates here than I remember. And not of the best stock, if you ask me. It's like carrying on a conversation with a stump.
Would you rather talk to a stump or someone who will use your words against you in the following nights?
In that case, I'd choose the stump.
Precisely.
I think I would be too dreadfully bored to uphold a conversation with said stump.
This conversation has gone a bit maudlin, hasn't it?
Yes, it has.
Perhaps we should make our way back to the manor and see what our illustrious leader's up to.
Not
Yes.
quite.
That strange and dangerous cast hasn't left Cormac's face as he turns about on the road from the Tower of London to head back to the manor.
As they're walking back to the manor, she goes up to walk beside Cormac and leans over to... And if you're interested in exactly what it takes to do such a thing, it requires quite a bit of weaponry, none of which I have any expertise in making.
There are a few tales that were floating about London around the time I last came. Supposedly it's been attempted in the past, and was a great failure.
Yes, but that makes it a bit more of a challenge, doesn't it?
If one were seriously considering it. And he looks sidelong at you, Eleanor.
She doesn't say anything, she just has a pleasant smile on her face. She's more amused by this talk.
Well then, how would you go about it?
We can discuss that when we get back. If we discuss it out here, people could overhear, and, well, let's just say people do tend to take things the wrong way.
It would be treason.
Luckily.
I like treason.
She laughs a bit and says, well, I mean, from a statistical standpoint, considering such options is a good way to hone one's skills. Not that said actions would ever be taken, but challenging oneself.
A thought exercise, yes.
Exactly.
Plenty of those I learned when I was learning logic. Many roads and many fallacies.
Alright, the group of you continues to make your way back to the manor house. We will pause here, take a break, since we're about a little over 2 hours in, and we will end the scene and come back in about...
Boom.
waiting for you guys to tell me you're going to assault the Tower of London to save Edmund Beaufort.
We're going to assault the Tower of London to save the random duke we've never met and barely have heard of.
I'm just waiting to hear it.
Who is the? Did anyone claim his title, or is it still under his name?
Claim the title of what?
Dorset.
Oh, no. No one's going to claim his title while he's still alive. He's not just the Earl of Dorset. That's like the most minor title he has. He, more significantly, is the second Duke of Somerset. And he's a very powerful political influence that has basically grouped with the Queen to manipulate King Henry VI. So he's one of these counselors that's kind of conspiring. And right now, the Duke Richard of York, he is taken over as the Lord Protector because the king is insane. And because he took power, he put one of his enemies in prison, Edmund Beaufort.
All right.
But his title is still his right now. Okay, I'm going to take a break. I'll be back in a little bit. Scene opens at the Manor of House Chamberlain as Amelia, Cormac, Robert, and Elenid return. And Thomas, you get alerted that your guests have returned and are entering the foyer now, if you wish to join them.
He'll put away what he's working on and tuck it into a desk drawer and lock it. And then go and join them in the main hall, or main room.
Okay. Soon enough, the four of you see that Thomas is coming downstairs and joins you. And the group of you are together in this foyer. The scene is yours.
So as a thought exercise, can I actually continue with that tactic thing? I'm not saying she's gonna vocalize it, just thinking.
Like internally, you want to think about how to assault the Tower of London?
Yes!
Okay. Yeah.
Because
sure.
thought exercises.
Okay. I mean, in intelligence, academics. Yeah, standard difficulty. It's not so much that it's difficult to do this thought exercises. It's more just like the more successes you get, the more information you'll get about how to do it. Okay, 2 successes, but with your specialty definitely applying here, it's going to be 3.
Not my best roll.
No, but it gets the gears rolling in your head, at least with 3 successes. It would depend heavily on your resources, on how much siege equipment you brought to take the Tower of London. A fortification like that would no doubt have stores to last years, and most armies would have trouble maintaining a siege that long without a lot of supply lines and support. It'd be very dependent on what you brought, but you think you could probably take it by keeping it at siege and basically starve them out in 8 years if they didn't sally out and you didn't have your army wiped out or desert. Otherwise, you would need more siege equipment than you've seen brought on previous expeditions. Many shays and battering rams. It's a kind of commitment where the thing you're coming back to is there would have to be something of disproportionate value in the Tower of London for it to be worth the resources to take it. And you're having trouble thinking of what that would be. Because it would be extremely expensive and time consuming. So that's what you get.
To everyone else, she just looks like she's lost in thought, contemplating things.
So as Thomas is coming downstairs to Elenid, very lost in his thought, he'll look pointedly at Cormac. Have you told them yet?
Robert raises an eyebrow questioningly.
Cormac still here?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Were you talking to... I don't...
Well, I'll repeat. Thomas comes down the stairs and looks pointedly at Cormac, an eyebrow arched. Have you told them yet?
Told them what?
All the better. Amelia, I apologize. The less you know about what we're about to discuss, the better. Please excuse yourself.
She frowns and turns to leave.
About what we found on that hill.
I thought we'd already discussed it.
Apologies, what? Was someone saying something?
To an extent, but I felt it might be a good idea to revisit in light of recent events.
There were a number of Canaanites there. One's fed up with the establishment of which we're part. I can't say I blame them.
Did they give their organization a name?
No. But that would be admitting to themselves that they are an organization, I suppose.
Which means they aren't part of this upstart Camarilla nonsense. They extended an invitation to us.
I'm gonna take a quick intelligence politics roll from... I'll say everybody, even Tom. Difficulty is going to be 8. Your knowledge of the Camarilla. Okay. So Thomas, all you know is what you've heard of from your sire, really. Otherwise, the other things you've heard about them, you're fairly certain are exaggerated lies that you kind of dismissed. Elenid, Cormac, and Robert, you've heard the name, and you know very little about it. All you really know is that it's a confederation of vampires organized by some group of elders. It sounds very similar to the Covenant, except that it's apparently in some kind of conflict with the Giovanni. And I think if you would know anything more, you would have each probably heard the name Hardstadt. I would say that's all we really know.
So in light of this invitation we've been extended, thoughts?
An invitation was sent. No doubt, expecting betrayal of the Covenant.
How do we know we can trust them?
We don't.
Only in the assumption that they would be desperate for our help.
At best, we would be a feather in their cap.
Well, it is good you've brought up our attention to this, though I question why we are even considering this offer.
Are we considering it? Simply felt you might like to know that we are recruitment targets.
Very well then. I assume this can be easily dismissed then.
Speaking of recruitment targets, Mr. Giovanni has attempted to recruit us shortly after our leaving.
And they seek the Cappadocians.
Apparently they have some kind of conflict with them. I would suggest not asking directly for contact with any Cappadocians. They might spook. Definitely know their friends would go to great lengths to keep them hidden.
Yes, I agree. Which will make our job a bit more difficult.
Indeed, but don't the Giovanni have a particular penchant for dealing with the dead?
I have never interacted with one of them.
I've never even heard of them until tonight. What bloodline do they hail from?
As my sire described it, they are from the same bloodline as the Cappadocians.
So overthrowing the old to become the new power base.
That's ridiculous.
Going so far as to change their name even.
Don't know the particulars, but it does sound suspiciously very much like what this cadre of kindred we found in Dorset were planning.
Are you suggesting they are allies?
Quite the opposite. The Giovanni seem disinterested in interclan politicking, where Ellen and her lot seemed more interested in overthrowing the status quo.
But on the other hand, if we do go to the Giovanni, it means we would owe the up-and-coming clan a favor, and given their current issues, it is easy to assume how they would wish it to be repaid.
Quite right. They are attempting to curry favor with the Covenant and seeking our organization's support in their ventures. I wouldn't want to give them any more credence than they already think they have.
Politics aside, our investigation, the thing we've not really discussed in depth.
I'm nursing a pet theory. The pieces haven't quite fallen into place yet. But It seems curious that a member of the Gauntlet, who had just recently either crafted or commissioned a rather fine tapestry demonstration of his wares, met a foul end at about the same time he was going to ship it off to, I would suggest, his associate, if not his lover.
Speaking of the tapestry, I believe Robert had some questions about it.
Yes. Your knowledge of textiles must be great. Could you perhaps track its point of origin or anything of that sort?
It's an excellent question. Would Thomas know any facilities capable of creating something comparable, if not equal to?
In theory, and you would know this, any facility could create it, given the right materials and the right craftsmanship. It's hard to say which factory or which producer or manufacturer it might have come from.
Would I have any idea of where the materials would have come from, or any particular craftsman who is that talented?
Let's see. I'm just looking over my notes here. So from your inspection, it was Deveray Velvet, brilliant aquamarine dye. You would know that it is a very fine and harder to produce velvet. Let me think. I'm trying to endgame this to see if it actually ends up helping you, so I can get you to that point.
Works for me.
Yeah, I'm gonna say that really any manufacturer could have it imported and made. You suspect Gaetan because you saw that it was made probably specifically to be a model, probably for some negotiation. It doesn't necessarily matter where it was made. It was probably made for the purpose of negotiation, and then either it was shipped to him or he brought it along when it was mid-transit at his estate, when it just happened to be there. That's what you kind of think when you put the piece together and what you know about this cloth. Nothing significant comes to mind about where it might have been made. That's kind of neither here nor there to you.
Where it came from is less important than where it was going. Generally, cloth of that quality and of that nature would be part of a negotiation. To what end? We might speak with your grandsire about?
Well, I can write a letter. I do not think it is worth a whole trip up to Lincoln.
But Cornelius is in Lincoln, the other witness.
Ah, yes, so he is. Please tell me we're not going to ride all the way over to Lincoln now.
Certainly not tonight. But perhaps our next stop.
And to learn more from this axe, how exactly are we planning to go about this?
We could inquire with the priors, see if they can't track down Tybalt or his associates.
He did occasionally come by Elysium. Well, back in Bristol.
Helen did offer her assistance in that manner.
Yes, but unfortunately we don't know enough about the man.
Yes. Do we know anything of his associates?
No, I have only heard word that he has connections up here.
Well, in that case...
If push comes to shove, I could redeem a boon and try to contact the Capitoshan that way, but being forced into the open like that will likely scare him more than anything else.
No, I certainly don't want him putting his neck on the line any more than we're going to already ask him to. Though, we could inquire of the Giovanni, if such a thing as we are going to request is even possible.
I suppose if they are of the same bloodline, that is an option.
Though I am personally against selling out their parent lineage, purely to get things done.
Quite right. But at least we'll know whether or not the trip will be wasted.
And surely the clan that consorts with the dead are not the only option.
Quite so. Perhaps someone with a deal more insight into the spiritual.
Yes. Perhaps. We should seek more help from here before we leave, I think. Perhaps learn of any Cassandras or... I half wonder if Bella would be interested in looking at the axe.
I hesitate to ask her for favors. She is, as Cormac pointed out, quite the snake.
Is there anything else anyone would like to discuss?
Nothing that immediately comes to mind.
You should all know that I have it on good authority, both from my own sire and from those who work my interests here in town, that war is definitely on the horizon, either from the kind or from other kindred, but it is coming.
Well,
Go ahead.
the unfortunate circumstance that always seems to keep me in business.
Perhaps you know exactly who to bet on.
Well, I don't know which side to bet on if there are no sides to pick.
Of course, I speak of when these sides are known.
I would expect one side to be backed by the Camarilla, and the other to be backed by the as yet unnamed group we met in Dorset.
And do we expect any other third parties?
As I mentioned, I have a pet theory on that. The Worshipful Company of Mercers seems an excellent vehicle for currying influence from outside from the continent to Britain herself.
And you, Cormac, do you have anything to add?
Nothing at the moment.
What time is it?
Closing in around 3 in the morning now.
Shall we prepare to retire for the night and reinvestigate our options the next evening?
I suppose we can do just that.
Wonderful. I do wonder what my chambers will be.
There are quarters available upstairs.
Alright, so the group of you retire to different quarters in the House Chamberlain Manor tonight?
Yep, sounds good.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. All four of you find rooms of your own for the coming day. And before you realize it, day comes and you are pressed into torpor. Take a blood point off for each of you. And you awaken the next evening. And Thomas, as you're getting about ready for this evening, you realize that Amelia did not appear anywhere in the manor last night before going to sleep, and you don't seem to find her anywhere in the beginning of this evening.
She's not anywhere in the manor?
Not that you can find. And the staff you ask say they haven't seen her since she left late last night.
She left late last night?
Yes, they report to you she left.
Oh, good.
What is Cormac doing this evening, and what does he mean to do? What's going through his head at this point?
Cormac is still quite a bit irritated with the events of the previous night. He'd forgotten how much he hates London. It's all coming back to him now when he sees those familiar faces. Now he's got the Cappadocians and the Giovanni to think about as well. He's going to go wait in the main room for the others to wake up and appear, however. Surely they'll have some ideas for things they want to get done tonight.
And Robert, what are thoughts passing through his mind, and what does he mean to do tonight?
He's thinking of socializing in Elysium, redeeming himself after last night, perhaps enlisting help to at least get a conversation going with Edmund.
Edmund?
Yes.
Edmund Beaufort, the Duke of...
Yes.
You know he's in the Tower of London, right?
I said arrange for perhaps a conversation of sorts and say break him out.
So you want to... Hang on. You want to meet with Edmund Beaufort while he's in prison and discuss a plan to break him out. the second Duke of Somerset, and an enemy to the Lord Protector of England.
I mean, the breaking out part doesn't have to be now, but
Right, you're just talking to him right now.
yeah, just talking to him.
Right, sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. That's good. This is good. Elenid, what's going through your mind, and what do you mean to do this evening?
Well, for starters, she plans to meet up with the rest of the group and see if there's anything further that needs to be discussed. Barring that, she will write a letter to her ghoul back in Bristol.
Okay, anything in particular, or just kind of a check-in?
More of a check-in.
Sure, okay. Alright. Within an hour of rising, you all get yourselves together, cleaned up, and meet in this main foyer at the front of the manor house. And each of you see in turn that all have arrived, and the scene is yours. We'll say Robert is last to enter as he concocts a plan to meet with the second Duke of Somerset.
Oh, good evening, everyone.
Yes, good evening to you as well.
Any new thoughts come to mind as we rested?
Apparently some thoughts came to mind for Amelia. She has already departed sometime prior to us taking
She
rest.
tends to make that a habit.
Yes, again.
I've noticed.
Hopefully she will be back.
Hopefully she doesn't sully your name.
Hopefully she doesn't breach the silence of the blood.
Which in effect would also affect you, since you were admitting to caring for her until she's properly introduced. I admittedly do not know this city, but I will assist if you want me to help locate the wayward fledgling.
Please. For now, I'll have the staff search the grounds, see if...
Did she take anything with her? Is the axe and the banner still safe?
That's a good question. Thomas is going to go search. Well, the banner should be fine. But he's going to go back and check his room.
Yeah, they both appear to still be here.
I'd be surprised if she could gain access to the tapestry itself. The axe is fine, though.
Good. Good.
Is anyone feeling up for taking the axe to Elysium?
That seems like a terrible idea.
We should really try to locate her first, just to mitigate any damage that may be caused.
Quite right. Priorities. Well then. Do your staff know where she was last seen? Heading?
Out the back gate. So Thomas is going to go ahead and question some of the staff and see if she had changed clothes or if she was still wearing the same thing she'd had on.
Looked like she was wearing the same clothes, and she just left out the front door, and no one really said anything because she's a guest of yours.
So we're looking for one, perhaps the largest city.
To no one in particular, Thomas says, if you were a frightened young girl in a strange city the size of London, where would you go? And then I'm going to roll perception empathy. Let's see if I can't reason that out.
I will have you roll a wits empathy instead. Difficulty 7. You can think of a couple places that she might go, especially thinking that there are only a few places she does know. There's the inn, your locale from the previous night that you stopped in at. There's Elysium, although it didn't go very well. Perhaps she wants to try and improve things. Those are the two ideas that come to your mind, are places that she's already been, maybe.
So he looks at Elenid. We'll see if she went for a late night meal.
She nods.
Are we planning on splitting up and checking multiple places?
And there's no reason for all four of us to be bound up hunting tracking down an erstwhile young lady. I'm sure Elenid can find her well enough.
Do you have any vials of which could hold vitae?
I'm sure something can be found.
Then I will ask to borrow it.
You have wine bottles. You don't have any empty vials per se. That's more of an alchemist's line of work. In theory, you could bottle in a wine bottle if you emptied it out.
And that's what Robert will do.
You're gonna bottle some of your own vitae?
Yeah, some of his own. I'll take it with him. I plan on searching Elysium.
I'll go with you. It's my second shot, after all.
Very good.
Right. So you all depart from the manor. Cormac and Robert going towards Elysium. Is Elenid going with Thomas?
Yes.
Okay. So we will follow Cormac and Robert first into the streets. As you return to Elysium, and Cormac, you notice that it appears Robert has a bottle of very fine wine with him. It looks attractive even to you.
What are you carrying around a bottle of wine for? Planning on wooing a lady?
It is always good to carry around a gift when one wishes for something.
I haven't an idea what you'd be wishing for.
Mainly to enlist assistance in speaking with a prisoner.
You haven't gone and gotten a fool idea in your head, have you?
Full? I wouldn't say that. Fruitless? Perhaps.
Why would you waste your time with a fruitless endeavor? We have enough to do as it is.
Because I'd like to have things running in the background while we decide exactly what we're going to do.
I'm sure we all have things we'd rather be doing. But there's yet the pressing matter of the murder of the Gauntlet.
Well, is it not said we do have a witness unwilling to come forth with evidence that proves his innocence? Or should I say suspect?
I'll trust that you know what you're on about. Are you ready to go inside?
I am.
I'm not sure I am. But let's do it anyway.
Perhaps you can introduce me to the, well, at least others that look upon you favorably.
I don't think there are any such a thing. All the neonates I tried to woo so long ago are all gone now. Or at least they haven't shown their faces to me yet.
It is another night. Let's hope for the best.
I'm here strictly looking for Amelia. Let me make that clear.
Of course. I am hoping we can save a long look and she will be here. Or at least someone wouldn't have seen her.
All right. And as the two of you enter, almost on command of speaking her name, you see Amelia in Elysium, in the company of Bella Matea and Helen and the man you saw storm off before, who rushed ahead just past you, the four of them seem to be speaking in a party by themselves. There are a number of other individuals, perhaps neonates, perhaps ghouls and retainers again, but you notice this party for the number of notable individuals in it, Amelia, of course, being one of them. And she actually seems to be smiling and laughing, drinking something out of a wine glass.
Cormac's grin immediately falters and is replaced by a rather stormy look.
It appears others have gotten to her first.
And just the ones I didn't want to get to her.
No doubt she is being molded as we speak.
Not on my watch. And he'll actually storm over to the table, angry as all hell.
Robert will follow behind.
All right. They see you coming a mile away, and given your demeanor, all eyes are on you, Cormac. The laughter's stopped as Amelia looks to you a bit concerned now, still holding this wine glass. And Bella Matea is the first to speak up, still sitting on the couch, her legs are crossed. There he is. I've finally drawn you in.
And you knew just how to do it, didn't you? His eyes are planted firmly on Amelia, though. Amelia, what are you doing here?
Well, I didn't have anywhere to go. Last night, I thought I would return and take up Miss Matea on her offer of feeding from her domain for the next year for a small favor. An entire year of being able to feed and get to explore this city. I couldn't not think about the idea. It was such a good offer.
Almost too good to be true, one might say. And his eyes will drift over to Bella. Harpy or not, he doesn't care. There is deeply seated rage in those eyes. She is not yours to torment.
Come, please. Relax and sit with us, and speak. And this other man, the man who's been very quiet, that you can, so far as you've been able to tell, with this dark-clad tunic and short brown hair and facial hair, he's been watching you very carefully, and he has a blade at his side sheathed, and his hand has been at his hip, though not on the hilt.
Cormac will lay his hand on the table with the ring clearly in view. If you want to skin that adder, do it now, and it'll be the last thing you do. He does not look like he's playing.
Perhaps you should take the woman's advice and sit down and speak. Bella Matea has great influence, but she is also very reasonable. I have heard the proposal and offer she made to this neonate. It does not sound outrageous to me.
This neonate is spoken for.
It is not my affair to involve myself in. I simply offer a suggestion of peaceful resolution.
Very well, he says. His face immediately drifting into a smile. Robert, shall we grab a couple chairs?
Robert looks at Cormac questioningly. Yes, we can have a peaceful talk. Why not?
Cormac turns around to grab a chair, and the way he picks it up, just for a moment, it might almost have seemed like he was going to bring it crashing down on top of their table. Then he sets it down gently and takes a seat.
The man to your side kind of adjusts himself as if uncomfortable.
He gives him a dirty grin because it was for his benefit that he did it. Then he'll blow him a kiss.
I have offered this same deal to many neonates. A small favor in exchange for feeding from my property. One that is offered to beyond the neonates. Any may take me up on that. I have more than I need, you see. It is my way of giving back.
Well, what a lovely proposition you make it sound. Almost too good to be true.
Well, when one is young, it can be difficult to procure the so needed.
And she kind of gestures out towards Robert, her hand outstretched as if pointing to him as an example, and then nodding in agreement. So many of these neonates go so very far. It is far more beneficial for us to have this exchange because I get to hear about the lands beyond London, and they get to not worry about the difficulties of adjustment, of trying to find somewhere to feed without hurting someone or getting caught. And I get to hear about these faraway places.
She comes from Dorset, Bella Matea.
But where will she go?
That, I suppose, remains to be seen.
Precisely. I am not the snake you would make me out, Cormac de Courcy. I have been at this a very long time. I have seen the snakes. Eleanor Grey, that was a snake. I, for one, was actually in support of the words that you held here in London 70 years ago, during that revolt.
Were you, after all?
She smiles. Not that it matters to you. I'm sure you had your own preconceptions of me, given my status here.
I suppose it wouldn't be fair to me for me to judge you as a bootlick of the Covenant when I myself had joined their strongest arm.
There's compromise. That is not something we see often among the elite, and as someone that has ended up among the elite, I try, when I can, to balance the odds.
Did you say that Alan Alice was here?
No, I said Helen, sorry.
Helen. Oh, good lord. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Robert, do you have anything you'd like to add?
I think if Amelia so valued this, it should be her choice.
I may not be long to this existence, but I am not a complete fool. I know what a favor is. You explained it to me on the way here. I know she can call upon it later. Perhaps when I'm more useful. She's helping me in a way that others cannot. That Thomas has not offered to help me. I wouldn't ask him to feed me each night. And now I don't have to.
It wounds me to hear that you did not think of asking us, but what's done is done.
I'm not a child. I do not need caretakers.
No, it seems you do not. Well, it's Thomas himself who's taken responsibility for you, being for you the sire that you'd never had. If he so chooses it, he can release you. Then your struggles are your own.
At the least you'd be taken care of for a year. Hopefully you.
I am sorry about one thing. That the education I gave you on the way here meant so little to you. Do not understand that there is a huge difference between a favor and a boon. And his eyes will drift over to Bella Matea before he rises. All the best of luck to you, Amelia. And to the rest of you, good evening.
Bella Matea bows her head. As do the others in turn, except Amelia, who looks dejected.
Robert frowns plainly in view. Well, this has turned quite awkward.
Not at all. You can stay if you like. I have other things to attend to.
I'm sure Thomas will want to hear of what has happened. He was quite worried.
You need not worry anymore. She's in the best of care. And with that, he does as he says, and turns and leaves, his short cape swishing behind him.
Well, if he's not going to join us, perhaps you shall. What did you say your name was?
Robert de Vere.
Pleasure to meet you, Robert de Vere. I am César de Lyon, emissary from Hardestadt and the Camarilla.
The pleasure.
I have been told that, and he's kind of looking at your ring and then back to you, you hold great sway in England.
With our office, yes.
I was just explaining to Bella Matea here that the Camarilla is in need of allies in England if it is to thwart the evils of the Giovanni and the danger of the Anarch Revolt.
Indeed. I was approached by a Giovanni. You consider them a threat?
Ludovico. Yes. And he kind of folds his arms, looking irritated. They have committed great evil. Unspeakable. They destroyed a progenitor. An ally of the Camarilla, even in its Nascient's form. And now they seek to exterminate an entire clan.
Robert's eyes go wide. Surely such a thing would be anathema.
It is anathema. And that is why we are at war with them, and why I am here entreating with the princes of England to help us fight the Giovanni, to hunt them down, and battle them where we find them. Or at the very least, to not let them stay in court spreading their lies. Bella Matea is very influential. I thought to seek her aid in swaying London's opinion. He looks over to Bella, who smiles briefly and nods. With the influence you hold, perhaps you might help us.
What evidence do you have of your claim?
Are you familiar with Hardestat the Elder?
Yes. Vaguely.
I speak with his voice as his representative. He witnessed this act himself. Many did. Of course, I understand news is slow to reach in this corner of Europe, but it is the truth, much as he may wish to hide it. And he kind of points out vaguely in the direction of the screen where you assume he means Ludovico. They will say what they need to hide, obscure the truth of their rise to power. It's sickening.
It certainly does not help their case that they are offering rewards for the location of Cappadocians.
He nods grimly. Will you aid us, then?
I will bring the news to my peers, and discuss things before we come to a unified decision, but I suspect your case will go over smoothly.
I hope so, Lord Devere. If you'll excuse me, I must attend to some business that still occupies me this evening. I bid you all a good night. He turns to everyone in turn, nodding before rising, and he bows to you at the waist.
Robert nods in acknowledgement.
And then he turns to leave in the direction of the screen. And briefly, we'll follow Cormac. Where do you mean to go?
Cormac is going back to the manor. Robert pretty much asked him to tell him what was going on, so he will, though he is furious.
Okay.
His furies might have been cooled by finding out who this man was, but it's too late for that. Brujah temper has prevailed.
Meanwhile, elsewhere in London, we follow Thomas and Elenid as they depart the manor, and eventually they also reach a destination at the inn. And it's very early in the evening, so the inn, of course, is very busy. You don't see any Amelia here, but otherwise things seem to be fairly in order.
So no Ellen or Amelia. Got it.
I wasn't aware we were looking for Ellen.
But rather than waste the trip, since does not appear to be anyone here that he's actually looking for, he's going to go ahead and feed from any of his herd that happen to be about.
All right. Was it last night that you fed from your herd?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. So you can feed from them again. It depends on how much you're going to take and how frequently you're going to be doing this. But, of course, the more you do this more frequently, it's going to start having an impact. Unless you just want to feed off of some of the passers-by, the travelers.
No, Thomas needs about 3 blood points at the moment, so that's feasible. But can I just use my herd dots as extra dice?
I'm going to say if you're involving your herd again the next night, you didn't take much from each of them, so right now you're fairly sure, you're not a physician, but you're fairly sure they'd be okay if you took more from them. Probably.
I'll go ahead and tap that well one more time.
Okay. Yeah, by the time you're done feeding, some of them are very weak. Some of them look like they're about to daze off, leaning against walls and clearly disoriented, but no one's falling over dead or anything yet. You can take your 3 points. And what do the two of you mean to do now?
Well, while he's doing that, since their target is not here, Elened will find herself a group of people and chat it up with them. Well, an isolated group of people, chat up with them, and once the opportunity arises, feed.
Okay, and when you chat up, do you mean kind of like cajole, or how do you mean?
Well, the best luck she's had with feeding so far has come with her using tales from her homeland, so she's going to continue doing that.
Alright, I'll give you a charisma expression to tell tales of your homeland and enamor people into being very distracted by you and trusting of you and giving you an opportunity to feed.
Standard difficulty?
Yes. Alright, you can take up to 5 blood points, not from one person, but kind of across people and throughout the next hour.
I'm only taking one.
Alright, easy enough to do. You tell wonderful stories, and people are naturally drawn to them. It's child's play for you to feed this way, at least so it seems right now. And after an hour, it seems that both of you are sated and content with how things have gone. You come back together, seeing that both of you seem to be idling.
Perhaps Cormac and Robert had better luck. But at least it wasn't a wasted trip.
Yes, we should likely try to check in, see if they've returned.
I agree. Hope the young lady hasn't got herself in any dire straits. And given what happened the last time they were here, is there anything terribly out of place, like oddly vacant tables?
If you're looking for vacant tables, I'll take a perception alertness, difficulty 6. Yeah, just to look for vacant tables, that's not too hard. You know, crowds move here and there, sometimes hard to see is something occupied or not, but you get the gist after scanning. Right now, you don't see any unoccupied tables. Looks fairly occupied right now, fairly busy.
Is paranoia satisfied? Thomas will gesture for Elened to take the lead.
Yes, Elened will leave the building and head on back.
Alright. Meaning to return to the manor, or where to?
Meaning to return to the manor, see if they've returned there yet.
Alright. With that, we'll close the scene, fade to black as the scene ends, and we will pause here at 9, and we'll pick it up next week as the group rejoins itself at the manor to discuss the next steps.
All right.
We'll do 1 XP all around. Let's do entertaining role players. We'll start with Robert.
Ooh. I really enjoyed Cormac's outbreak. At seeing the tendrils around Amelia.
Cool. And Cormac?
I'm actually going to give it to Elenid for seriously considering how she might break into the Tower of London.
Nice.
Just a passing comment, and she ran with it.
Yep. And Elenid?
I'm gonna give it to Thomas because, well, how well he handled the Vipers, so to speak, in Elysium.
Like a regular snake charmer. And Thomas?
I'm also going to give it to Cormac for the reaction to Bella's. I hate to reuse somebody else's metaphor, but yeah, the tendrils of boons and favors.
Pretty sneaky.